I've always had issues with America's founding fathers. I don't like the patriarchal framing of it. I don't like putting random white men on a pedestal. I don't like that they had no problem wiping out Native Americans. And I don't like the fact that many of them upheld the institution of chattel slavery. Washington, first president, inherited enslaved people, wore black people's teeth in his mouth, and emancipated them later. Jefferson was a whole ass plantation owner with an estate, fathered children with Sally, his house slave, and barely freed any of them upon his death. Him and James Madison wrote constantly about the evils of slavery and opposed expanding it. Meanwhile, Madison had well over 100 enslaved people and never freed any of them upon his death. Y'all's hero, Benjamin Franklin, Kite Boy, owned people at one point too. By the way, these were deeply contradictory men. But here's the thing. People can be hypocrites and morally dubious and still identify a real abuse of power. One of the ways the founders did that was draft this, the Declaration of Independence. It lists 27 grievances against King George III, 27 reasons the colonies argued they had to separate from the monarchy. Most people can agree that this list of grievances the soon-to-be US had with England were well thought out. There's times where items on the list might as well have been predicting the future, when in reality, they were reflecting what was happening to them. The English monarchy shared a lot of flaws with today's government and commander-in-chief, and that's what I'm here to talk about. One specific part of the long list of grievances the founding slavers had. And I quote, "He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions." End quote. Now, before anybody says it, yeah, that second half is racist as hell. Calling Native Americans merciless Indian savages tells you exactly how these men viewed the people whose land they were taking. We're not glossing over that. We're not pretending anyone in question was morally enlightened. They weren't. But the first part, let's lock in on that. Exciting or inciting domestic insurrections. Does that ring a bell?
We'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
Invade the Capitol building.
I'm not tolerating any of the wishy-washy language about whether or not he incited a riot. He absolutely did. Those rioters murdered Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died the following day after experiencing multiple strokes. It was ruled natural causes. But let's be serious here. The riot was also responsible for the death of 4 Capitol Police officers who took their own lives in the months following the incident. Yes, that was their fault too. Y'all have seen the pictures and the footage. Members of the right-wing paramilitary groups, the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, rocking armor, weapons, mace, and actively beating their way into the Capitol. Feds did a sweep after that using surveillance footage from the hundreds of cameras in front of that building. People got arrested from several states away in many cases. They were definitely there, and they were definitely being violent insurrectionists. We saw layers to this domestic terrorism. Chanting about 1776, carrying "Don't Tread on Me" flags alongside American flags, Continental Army symbols, a flood of clear signs that they aligned themselves, at least in their minds, with the colonists in the Revolutionary War. Not only did Trump wait to call off the dogs until all the damage was done that day, he retroactively pardoned these criminals. Full stop, 14 people were listed by name, and then the next clause freed every single person involved in the attack on the Capitol. Some of them came back in marches and protests, wearing shirts and holding posters, thanking Trump for the pardon. Why did Trump do this, you might be asking? He has a track record of throwing favors to people who benefit him, at least while they're useful to him. He consistently meets with corporate CEOs and foreign dignitaries to get favors from them in exchange for favorable tariff percentages. Like when a desk clock from Rolex got him to lay off of Sweden. Let's not forget Qatar's $400 million jumbo jet donation. Blatant corruption that has kind of become run-of-the-mill in this administration. This amounts to using the powers of the president to get terrorists out of prison just because they were on your side of the conflict. I'm not done yet. Legal experts at the Democracy Defenders Fund have called what happened next one of the most extraordinary abuses of presidential power in modern American history. Not only did he pardon these assholes, he used a $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS to create a backdoor slush fund and block the IRS from looking into any of his family's tax returns in perpetuity. That means forever. The lawsuit was for allowing the disclosure of his tax returns during his first term, by the way. A whistleblower named Charles Littlejohn assessed the returns and leaked them to the New York Times and ProPublica. The IRS is supposed to audit the president and vice president every year. So this entire pursuit is very clearly designed to let him make deals with himself and steal from us. I'm sure y'all have heard about what happened next with the slush fund by now. That $1.776 billion is supposedly for paying out the pardoned January 6th insurrectionists and covering another bullshit claim about the feds searching his Mar-a-Lago property. The Proud Boys sued for $100 million since they, got prosecuted and arrested for being domestic terrorists. Eric Trump got a $24 million contract for his robot company. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric pitched a drone company to Gulf countries that happened to be in conflict with Iran. And I'm sure y'all remember the crypto coins the family pushed out between both of these administrations. Don't get me started on Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law. Senator John Ossoff said it better than I ever could.
There's this beautiful little island off the Albanian coast called Sazan, and Jared Kushner wants it. So he took his Saudi billions and he decided he and Ivanka would buy the island and build a luxury resort. And then, like clockwork, just a few weeks after Trump wins a second term in the White House, Albania's prime minister grants Jared's company strategic investor status. So permitting and approvals are expedited to help the American prince develop his new island. Now, this island is an Albanian national treasure, some of the last pristine coastline in the Mediterranean. Its waters were a national marine park protected from development until Albania changed the law to let Jared Kushner build his resort. And it turns out, Savannah, that ordinary Albanians are not fans of this arrangement. There are right now massive national anti-corruption protests, like tens of thousands of people in the streets of the capital, Tirana. They're calling it the Flamingo Revolution, all sparked by opposition to Jared Kushner's land deal.
The declaration warned against everything Trump has done, using the presidency to line his family's pockets to the tune of over $1 billion from crypto alone, consolidating power in one man, and weaponizing our federal agencies to wipe out our rights. This is a level of corruption that's hard to rationalize under any circumstances. And I'm not going to act like I'm truly that surprised, but the point I'm making is that we're well outside of a normal bad president right now. If we lean into this metaphor about savages, that would be comparable to the way the Trump administration is weaponizing the government against non-existent groups like Antifa. There were no organized groups of indigenous people directed by a central body roaming around attacking colonists back then. And likewise, there aren't leftists of any category having meetings to perform terror attacks on Trump or Republicans. That hasn't stopped him from spreading false propaganda, as if it's really happening. On September 25th of last year, he designated Antifa as a terrorist organization with zero evidence to justify it. And I quote, "Antifa is a militarist anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, law enforcement authorities, and our system of law. It uses illegal means to organize and execute a campaign of violence and terrorism nationwide to accomplish these goals." End quote. It goes on to accuse this made-up organization of executing, quote, "armed standoffs with law enforcement, organized riots, violent assaults on immigration and customs enforcement and other law enforcement officers, and routine doxing of and other threats against political figures and activists," end quote. Just like everything else I bring up on this channel, the threats in this declaration aren't hypothetical. His Department of Justice acted on it by using the NPSM-7 to categorize protesters and activists as domestic terrorists. Remember, he pardons domestic terrorists that he actually likes. This categorization resulted in a 100-year sentence for someone who shot a police officer, while another person got 30 years for moving a box of zines or pamphlets. Whether it's the Stop Cop City protesters right here in Atlanta, or the activists fighting against the 2,700 ICE agents and feds invading Minnesota to target Somali people. Their charges are mostly for conspiracy to impede or injure a federal officer, but I guarantee you, those sentences are gonna be heavy as hell. This is petty misuse of the federal government to enforce a racist and prejudiced agenda. And I refuse to just act like we can't do anything to push back against it. This isn't the last thing he did, since he does something every other day, but it's last for now. Y'all remember when a group of Democratic politicians made a short video about how soldiers don't have to follow unconstitutional orders?
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
Or Navy.
the Air Force,
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
Our Constitution.
And who we are as Americans.
Senator Mark Kelly, who I spoke to recently, was one of them. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth followed this up by trying to get Kelly's military retirement grade reduced. Like, what? Trump called for those Congress members to be hung. Kind of like how his insurrectionists called for his own vice president to be hung. Y'all remember that? That's blatant promotion of political assassination on a public social media platform committed by the commander-in-chief. I got just as much smoke, if not more, for Republicans than most left-leaning content creators I've seen, but I don't recall ever wishing death on any of the people I disagree with. Yes, I'm aware that this is an appeal to common decency, while we talk about someone who launched his first campaign by calling Mexican immigrants rapists. But we need a reality check from time to time. There's no world where this shit would be tolerated by the racist slavers who founded this country. So how the hell did we get here 250 years after the Declaration was adopted? Look, man, American history is always tough for me to talk about. While the radical black activists, civil rights leaders, and political pioneers moved us forward, there's so many PACs and organizations that combat that progress. They see oppressed groups gain as their loss and manage to turn their persecution complex into hard policy. As far as what we do about it, check out any of the cited sources I've linked here to make sure each and every one of us understands not only the depth of the misuse of funds and power happening on the federal level right now, but also the ways in which this kind of runaway greed violates the founding principles of the country we're all citizens of. For people in my international audience, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that everything happening to us is going to impact you too. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I'm tired of talking about Trump and this administration and the agency heads he's put in over the last couple administrations, but it's necessary to lock in right now. A lot of people that aren't me are celebrating Independence Day today. And on the off chance that a handful of undecided moderates watches this, the denial has to stop. The rationalizations and lopsided comparisons to the far left have to stop. Our tax dollars are being funneled towards their personal financial projects, while domestic terrorism is excused as proud boys being boys. Your founding fathers were often raging racists with deeply contradictory rhetoric that didn't reflect their actions. But Trump is still the most blatant example of presidential corruption we've ever seen. And it isn't even slightly close. Anger is a given, but make sure it's well-informed anger. Check my facts as always. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Power to the people. I'm tired, man. The other day, I considered retiring from political work entirely. Juice is barely worth the squeeze, and the scrutiny is heavy sometimes. I've been talking about Trump and this administration for years, and I won't lie and say there aren't moments when I doubt the efficacy of this work. Y'all have told me directly that I shouldn't stop, that the work means something to you, and that you value the links and information being shared. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just speaking to the spiritual weight being carried at times. It's heavy. It feels like our entire government has been turned into an intentionally evil machine, even more so than it usually is. It's being aimed at those who can't defend themselves. Empathy seems to have been eradicated, and pettiness is standard protocol. Controlled anger is the only real way I can express all these emotions and actually get through a video coherently, But I want y'all to know that as long as y'all are here to discuss and reflect on what's happening to us, I'll keep going.